It's the everyday experiences we encounter along the journey to who we want to be that will define who we are when we get there. And that is my life. My experiences in a time of war, where I lived in a sheltered oblivion to what was happening outside my small community back in the 1930s and 1940s. A time of freedom and joy, a time of happiness and a reality that we never knew was threatening us. Today, it seems that young people are burdened with worry and are frightened. Had my parents told us that we were under threat of invasion from Japan in World War II, I have to ask myself, could I have enjoyed my childhood? Parents today do not shelter their children from fear. They seem to encourage it. I first saw the light of day, night actually, at 3 a.m. on Wednesday the 19th of October 1932 at the Roslin Private Hospital in Macmillan Street in Ayr. Many things happened in that year in Australia and worldwide, but to a youngster growing up, what was going on in the immediate vicinity was pure magic. Being the last born of three, having two older sisters, and living a few miles out of town on a farm growing sugar cane, the main crop of the Burdekin district, was like living in paradise. We had a Jersey cow called Cherry, who provided lots of wonderful milk. And when I was older, Dad taught me how to milk and, more importantly, to be wary of a Ngurra burr-filled tail, which Cherry liked to use to swat the unwary person on the milking stool. Not having a separator, Dad made a large, flat and shallow tray of tin which fitted on one shelf of the kerosene fridge. And Mum was able to skim off the rich, thick cream to make, with sugar and eggs, an ice cream to die for. I can taste it still. The skim milk was much appreciated by a little, soon-to-be big, pig, which didn't have a name. We also had mango trees, very useful for learning to climb, and many happy hours were spent exploring their branches. Cherry became very fond of eating mangoes, and when ripe ones were plentiful, could be seen contentedly munching on one and in very delicate ladylike fashion ejecting the seed, and overindulgence sometimes led to mango-flavoured milk. The years scurried by and soon it was time to go to school. Edmillan School was a one-teacher school about 3 miles away, and as I then had learned to ride a bike, sisters Marjorie and Mickey and I would happily pedal off each morning for our daily dose of learning. Edmillan School is no longer there, sadly, but there is a plaque listing head teachers to mark the spot. A neighbour remarked, "Those Kirk children are odd. The eldest girl rides along singing, the next one is whistling, and the boy pedals along talking to himself, a habit that has persisted for 80 years or so." We didn't realise at the time that I was very short-sighted, and this led to many anxious moments while riding to and from school, when burnt pieces of cane trash on the road looked very much like a snake, as they were not uncommon round the farms. It was a relief some years later when a visit to a local optometrist, Les French, identified the problem. Mr. French took me to the front door of his premises and asked me to read the time on the memorial clock at the far end of the block. He thought I was kidding when I asked what clock, then realised that I was serious and did have a problem. From then on, wearing glasses became part of my life. Hence the lead image of this article. That clock tower still reminds me of when I saw the world in all its beauty and I saw what I was missing. Sometimes we do not see what is right in front of us. Our family moved to Jarvisfield in 1939 and we lived on a cane farm only a short distance from the school. When we left Edmillan, a neighbour, Mrs. Gervin, had given me a little ginger kitten, and this started the delightful association with these great little critters that persists to this day. I notice that Megsy is nodding vigorously in the background. The 6 years at Jarvisfield were very happy. It was the largest school in Edmillan, and many good friends were made. William Ralph Ward, Bill Ward, was the headmaster, and he instilled much useful knowledge into us over the years. This was during the war years, and his son Tolly, on leave from service in New Guinea, brought back an unwelcome visitor, malaria, and my dad, my sister Mickey and I all fell victim. Fortunately, it was mild, but it certainly knocked Mum about, as she had to contend with 3 patients with fever and the sweats in succession each day. Dad went down first, and it was interesting that he had an argument with a local GP when he said that he thought it was malaria, which he had had in the First War. The doctor said that was impossible, as there was no Anopheles mosquito to carry it, but later this proved incorrect. Schooling continued at Jarvisfield until grade 6 at the end of 1944, and we moved into town in 1945, and I went to the Ayr High and Intermediate School. When the junior year was successfully completed in 1948, I was then eligible to apply for a Scartwater Scholarship, which took me to Thornborough College in Charters Towers in 1949-50, and the next rung of the ladder was achieved. Although there was no history of pharmacists in the family, I had always wanted to be a chemist, but this seemed unlikely at this stage when, out of the blue, an advertisement in the local paper, inserted by the local friendly societies, called for applications for an apprentice, and 2 extraordinary pieces of luck followed. First, I was fortunate to be chosen, and second, my master was the manager of the pharmacy, Joachim Alfred Charles Dugay, a gifted Polish pharmacist. As many had difficulty pronouncing his surname, he was known universally as Alf, and he was very popular. A single man, university trained, Alf had moved to England after the war and gained registration there, and had then moved to Australia. Why he would then decide to move to the wilds of North Queensland, I do not know, but it was certainly one of the best things that ever happened for me, and I will always be thankful. Alf spoke other languages in addition to Polish and English, including Hungarian and some French, German and Italian. During the 3 years of apprenticeship, he was able to add considerably to the knowledge I gained from the apprenticeship papers, which had to be completed and returned for correction, this being before it was a university course. Alf later left pharmacy and studied at Banyo to join the priesthood. He served in many areas of Queensland and died at age 86. He's buried at West End Cemetery, and I go up now and again to say good day and thanks for all he did. Shortly after, there was another stroke of good fortune. One of my long-standing friends, Graham Coots, whose family owned a retail shopping centre in Ayr, told me that they were about to remodel the centre and wanted to include a pharmacy in the range of outlets, and asked me to consider it. Back then, in the mid-50s, there were no restrictions on new pharmacies as there are today, and although at first reluctant, due to inexperience, persuasive argument from Graham and my wife Joan prevailed, and on Tuesday, the 1st of July 1958, the pharmacy opened. It was an exciting journey for 45 years in a community where I was born, and we made many friends, both in customers and also in staff members over this time, our daughter Fiona also having joined the staff in 1980. Local pharmacist Julie Hollingsworth also joined the staff, and on Joan's death in 1999, I made arrangements for retirement, and Julie took over as owner on Tuesday, the 1st of July 2003, 45 years to the day, and now I can obtain all my medications at Julie's pharmacy. It is a funny old world, isn't it? Perhaps we all need to step back and reflect on our lives, and in the words of Edith Piaf, have no regrets. I hope that our politicians and young voters will look back and say, no, I have no regrets. I wonder.